Workshop 2, key to writing a great business plan. I'd like to get things started off so everyone could take a seat. I'd like to start out by giving a thanks to our sponsors. This workshop is sponsored by Dun & Bradstreet Credibility Corp. They are both a cash and service sponsor for the EChallenge this year. Each of the finalists, 8 in total, will receive a year subscription to the Credibility Review Platinum Service at $1,200 value. Dun & Bradstreet Credibility Corp. is a leading provider of credit building and credibility solutions for business. They help businesses establish, monitor, and build their business credit, beginning with the D&B DUNS number, a unique 9-digit identification sequence used by the world's most influential standard-setting organizations and recognized, recommended, and often required by global corporations, governments, industry, and trade associations. Okay, I would like to point out David Eichhorn. David, where are you? So David is the Director of Team Development. If any of the teams that are here need some help with team development, please contact David directly. So the purpose of these workshops is prepare the teams in the Entrepreneurs Challenge for the finals and to help build and foster the entrepreneurial community at UCSD. So I'd like to do a quick survey for our panelists. How many people here today are from Jacobs School of Engineering? And from the social sciences? From Rady? Anyone else from any other schools at the university? Oh, all right. Anyone from just the San Diego community in general? All right. Welcome to Rady and UCSD. Okay, so I actually have a book here to give away to one of the lucky teams that has entered the Entrepreneurs Challenge. So is the grocery app team here? Oh. Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have 2 speakers tonight. I'm going to introduce them both. Ruprecht von Butler is Vice President, Business Creation and Development at CONNECT. He directs the execution and development of the Springboard program and the Near Sourcing Roundtable program. In addition, the top 2 winning teams, the first and second place of the EChallenge, will receive 1-year CONNECT membership. And our second speaker will be Liz Gasser, Vice President of Business Operations for Qualcomm Labs, where she is tasked with early stage business incubation. She is responsible for developing business strategies and managing operations across the portfolio of new technologies and platforms within Qualcomm Labs. She also serves on the evaluating committee for EvoNexus. The winning team, the winning teams of the Entrepreneur Challenge actually get past the first round of the EvoNexus judging. So that's actually a pretty big deal. Liz was just telling me there's about 140 that applied last year, and they bring it down to 30. So the EChallenge winners will be in that second round. Okay, so I'd like to introduce Rupert.
Thank you, Peter. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I see a number of familiar faces in the audience, so it's been here probably 3 or 4 times, telling the CONNECT story. And I must say that every year out of the UCSD Entrepreneurs Competition, there are amazing companies coming out of it, and I want to congratulate you. One of our capital competition winners is Naseo, which is a UCSD life science company, make dental implants for severely damaged people like diabetics and heavy smokers that can't really take normal dental implants, and they did extremely well in this competition. So it's a pleasure to talk to you a little bit about CONNECT. We are a business accelerator here in San Diego, really focusing on helping innovators and entrepreneurs developing compelling business plans and creating either licensable projects or spin-out companies. The second aspect that we're focusing on is really helping in the development and promotion of new industry clusters. So very early on, when the life science and the wireless industry started to converge, we helped incubate the Wireless Life Science Alliance, which is now an independent trade association. We incubated Cleantech San Diego within CONNECT, and are in the process of doing that with San Diego Sports Innovators. It's an association that really takes care of the 450 or so sports innovation companies in San Diego. The new one that's coming up is something that you might be familiar with biomimicry. There's the Center for Bioinspiration at the zoo that is going to help focus on sustainable technologies that comes from the zoo's knowledge of animals and more importantly, even plants. So we are focusing on business creation. We are getting our companies trained up and scrubbed through Springboard, which I'm going to talk about, and then we work very hard to provide access to capital. There's a number of entrepreneurship training programs that we do that are not anything that you would learn at the Rady School, but that are very tactically oriented, like, what is the art of the term sheet? What is the most appropriate way to incorporate the company, things like that, things that are typically taught by the law firms that sponsor Springboard, and so forth. We do a lot of partying, networking programs that draw 400 to 500 people, typically around companies that have gone through Springboard and that start operating. We give them tables, and then entrepreneurs come, there are investors that come in, a lot of the Rady School students, I'm sure, coming in as well, so it's pure networking, there's no content. But out of that, there's a lot of teaming going on that create new deals that eventually create companies. And we have a lot of competitions going on to really help identify viable companies. One of the most famous competition that we run is the Most Innovative Product Awards. This is for companies that have created a new product and actually, over the last 24 months, create revenue with us. And there are startups in there, but there are also companies like Qualcomm that compete in there, Northrop Grumman. So it's really a showcase of innovation for us. And on top of that, we realized that San Diego is more than 3,000 miles away from Washington, D.C. So we decided to open up an office in Washington, D.C. to advocate on behalf of our stakeholders. We have a local group here under Teresa Andrews. Some of you might have met her. That basically works with our stakeholders to create policy initiatives that then are brought to the House of Representatives through Tim Bono, our Vice President of Public Policy in Washington, D.C. So he works both sides of the aisle to make sure that we get traction there. Springboard delivers the mission of CONNECT in the sense that we focus on identifying compelling technologies. Very much like to work with UCSD, SDSU, and the research institution, because that's where typically really compelling technology and science is being developed. And then really educate those that want to commercialize those technologies. And then, as I mentioned, work very hard to get them funded. We are very lucky to have a large group of mentors. We have about 190 CEO level mentors that have started companies, grown companies to a successful exit, as well as a group of executives that are below the CEO, so senior marketing executives and CFOs that we can bring into a mentoring team to really address all the aspects of a compelling business plan. Business model, the go-to-market strategy, and the financial models. Plus, we are very lucky to have them come from all of the most important verticals that we have here in San Diego, a very, very strong life science team. There's a lot of Techos Angel members that mentor in that team. We have a strong technology team, a growing clean tech team. Through the San Diego Sports Innovator, we have a group of sports entrepreneurs that have done very well for themselves, and also consumer products. A little while ago, we decided to combine two of our programs. The Venture Roundtable program, which really reached out to the community to find companies that wanted to compete for access to capital. And we found out that they really didn't do very well because they hadn't gone through Springboard. So we decided to merge those programs together, and about 80% of all the companies that enter into the competitions actually go through Springboard, with the results that our investors say that the companies look a lot better and are much better prepared than before. So this is something that is open to all of you when you get started, like Naseo, that did very well on that. What comes to us often starts in the lab. We're working with scientists that are thinking about commercializing their technologies. We typically do an innovation assessment that leverages our CEO level mentors to get an idea of whether there's enough data from the science there to start the commercialization process, and if this is a licensing opportunity or if this is a technology platform that really lends itself to spin out a company. We work with the technology transfer offices of UCSD and SDSU, but about 80 to 90% of the things that we work with are the first-time entrepreneurs, first-time founders of companies that want to take advantage of the experience and the wisdom of our mentors to really build out a business plan and investor deck from scratch. And so we have about 350 or so companies a year that are coming through into the program, into the capital competition program, and into Springboard. We have a category for CEOs and entrepreneurs that have done this before, that fast-tracked through this process. That's the transition category. This is also a category that works with companies like SAIC, for example, that have a technology that's not core to their business strategy, that they think they might want to spin out. So we're working with them to decide what to do with this. And then we do a lot of global bridging. We work with companies that coming from Asia, Latin America, or Europe. They want to come to San Diego to access the California or the US market. What we're working on, the process is always the same, and this is important to you. There is an online application. This is organized on our website into our capital competition tracks. The current track that is open is for healthcare, but we take any company that wants to apply into that kind of application and then basically route them into the different competitions that are appropriate for them. You used to have to wait until the next competition starts, but not anymore. We start working with anybody as soon as we receive the applications. Then the first step really is, in the mentoring process, is the intake. It's an assessment. We want to find out, obviously, whether you guys are coachable. We want to find out what you have already developed, where the gaps are, and what the resources are that you need. And then we match you up with one or two of those CEO level mentors that then work with you on refining your business model, making sure it's scalable. And then when you're ready, take you into the marketing phase of the program, where we attract marketing executives into the mentoring team, and to the finance one, where you have all the qualitative aspects of your business plan together, cast that into a financial model, use our CFOs to audit that financial model to make sure that the business plan assumptions are accurately reflected in your financial models, and that your projections make sense, that you can support and defend them, and very much also to find out how much money do you need to raise at each significant milestone in order to get from where you are today to profitability. In parallel, we work with you and our law firms on making sure that, from a corporate and from an IP law aspects, you are taken care of, and then also to help you start putting your due diligence records together that you need at the end of the program to start meeting with investors. And then after that finance panel, we do a dry run in front of our another CEO level business advisors, make sure that everything is in place. And then we do something that's really important, and we put you in front of up to 12 industry experts, investors, potential strategic partners that are not part of the Springboard ecosystem. So they typically don't know you, they don't know a lot about the company or the things that you do. They get 3 paragraphs in an invitation, and then they're forced to listen to a 15-minute uninterrupted presentation from you. Then they get 35 to 40 minutes to really drill down on what there is or what there is not. So it's a Q&A session. And then they're asked to provide constructive feedback to you, and importantly, if they can, create relationships for you that essentially get you to the next level. So with the capital competition, we get 4 of them. Healthcare is now going. The next one is going to be productivity tools, connectivity tools, then life science, and then the digital life capital competitions. A lot of software, digital media type of companies coming in there. We have a better track record to get more companies involved. So we used to get about 180 to 200 companies a year to Springboard. With the capital competition, this is now going up to 300, 350. And the quality of the companies coming out at the end is much better. CONNECT is now out in more than 50 different markets around the world. The last one that we helped to create was CONNECT Bogota in Latin America. So if you, like I hope you do, think globally when you get started, we can provide you access to Asian, European, and Latin American market when you're ready to start thinking about export. Here's some examples of projects that we work with universities and with research institutions. Spaywar, Assure Controls is a company that has started in 2006, is now in the rapid growth stage of water testing technology. It came out of Spaywar, and then we got Radical Therapeutics and Tong Labs that came out of SDSU. There are every year about 6 to 10 UCSD projects that come through here, and there's a number of them that are also very successful. What I'm showing you now are some examples of companies that we consider poster children. Everyone Counts is a digital voting platform, a secure voting platform that initially was applied to help countries that have remote regions where people had trouble to get to their voting booths, to do this remotely, but which is also now used in generally elections in several countries around the world. Biometrica is a very interesting company that essentially found ways to stabilize RNA and DNA at room temperature. So if you think about labs and research institutions, rows and rows of freezers that used to be used to stabilize those biological samples, they can now do that at room temperature. It's a great biotech invention, but also a good clean tech invention because you reduce the amount of freezers in those labs. And it was really found by looking at a creature that lives in the desert called a tardigrade that can completely dehydrate and keep its DNA intact until it rains again and it comes back to life. So they mimic this, they biomimic this idea from that creature. This is a company that's in the healthcare IT space. They started out looking at the accounts receivable of hospitals. Hospitals are okay with healing people, some are good, but none of them are very good at making money and billing. So this company started out focusing just on the accounts receivables, accelerating the billing cycle, creating cash flow, and accelerating profitability. They raised several rounds through CONNECT and then merged with a company called Evodyne. The company is still here in San Diego and is now addressing the entire revenue cycle of the hospital from patient intake to release. You've probably seen those around here. They're not very popular riding up and down the Torrey Mesa. This is a company that created a new category of sports equipment in the industry. It was basically, if you remember, elliptical trainers in the gym that were for indoor use. They took this concept for outdoor use for injured runners that still want to enjoy the same type of exertion but without any significant impact to their knees. Company almost didn't make it in a springboard because, you know, who wants to buy a bicycle without a saddle? So we didn't get it. But one of our mentors did, help them out, help them actually create a business plan that attracted very quickly the first angel round. They also helped them build the supply chain in order to get this into manufacturing, and now this company ships all over California and the United States, and actually started shipping internationally as well. Anybody know this one? EcoATM? I bet you probably change phones every year, maybe 18 months at the most. And then if you open your desks at home, there are probably a lot of those ghosts left. We can now use those to put them into the EcoATM machine and get cash back. The business model behind EcoATM is really recycling this entire material that is in those cell phones and also in the e-readers, things like that. So they have already created those relationships. When your phone hits there, it's already sold. And that's how they make money. This is also a great near-sourcing example because this company used the DT Design Studios, was a Carlsbad firm, to do the design of the EcoATM machine, and used the D&K Engineering, which is an engineering services firm in Rancho Bernardo, to do the entire engineering of this, the prototyping, and also the manufacturing of this. So all of this value stays inside San Diego County. They have a great relationship with Pointstar, which you probably know. It's at almost every grocery store, so where you can collect your coins and get cash back. And between the two of them, they really can grow and scale very fast. This is very important. It's a biomarker that identifies, diagnoses clinical depression. So with the soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, they can be helped more effectively. It does not only diagnose depression, but it also can be used to measure the effectiveness of drugs used to treat it, to see that works. Independa, you know, you're probably going to be very quickly getting to the point where you need to take care of your parents. And through Independa, you can have them live in their homes longer, and you can supervise and be in touch with them through various sensors and telecommunication networks, make sure that they're doing well. And this, to me, collaborative life sciences, or Inhibrix, is the next form of actually funding and developing drugs. It used to be that companies like Pfizer or Merck needed to do a billion-dollar bet in order to get from one compound that might become a drug through the entire regulatory effort to get this drug to market, only to often find that in the clinical phases it fails. Here, Collaborative Life Sciences set out to raise $20 million to start 18 drug development programs. They raised $6 million, started with the first 9 programs, and about, I think 6 months ago, licensed the first one to Celgene for a value between $500 million and $1 billion. This was entirely funded through private investors, no VC. The structure of the company is an LLC. You can invest into each drug program, which each drug program is an LLC, and then they are basically collected on a group LLC. So you can invest in all or in specific ones. And man, the return on that investment is just absolutely out of this world. Hopefully everybody is familiar with Mitch Thrower, founder of Active Network. He came through Springboard in the 90s and then returned to do Bump Networks. This is like a membership network. They basically hinged it on rapid recognition of your license plate. So the way you register yourself is through your license plate, and you're addressable through that. So I can send a text message to your license plate and reach you. And then they built out of that technology, they built basically something that is going to look like AAA online in the social media world, and possibly replace that kind of membership network. So the only reason we can do that is because we have mentors to run through this. We have a good process, but without those mentors, we couldn't do it. Could not do it without the sponsors that we have, the collaborations that we have with law firms. So just to close, we track our Springboard alumni going back to 2005. About 70% of those companies that went through the program since then are still operating. More than half of them were able to raise money, not only from angels and VCs and grants, but also from private equity, which is an indication that some of our companies are now mature enough that typically later stage capital starts to invest in them. More than $530 million raised, and the last report is that in that 6-month period they created more than 900 jobs, which is really an indication of this impact of the program into our local economy. So with that, I'm going to close and open up for questions. Yes.
Great presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
So how do you guys how do you do business? Are you non-for-profit? Is there a fee that they have to pay? Do they give you percent of
Good
their
question.
profit?
Excellent question. So CONNECT is the business model for CONNECT is membership and sponsorship, or membership with a return on your engagement. So you become a member in order to keep the lights on, but in order to stay engaged, you sponsor a program. So Springboard is sponsored by 8 law firms and 2 universities. And obviously the return that the law firms get is a pipeline of paying clients in the future. So there's no fee. We don't charge any clients that want to come into Springboard any fees. Our mentors are forbidden on taking money for the services they render. Both our mentors and our clients sign agreements that basically express that they recognize what the terms are, and we also don't invest in our company. So we're trying to stay completely neutral, be a neutral, independent broker for those clients.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other ones?
Of the companies you just showed there,
Yeah.
how many were there?
So the total companies that we're tracking is more than 350, and the number of responses that we got was about 225. So not every company always responds, unfortunately, but we are assuming that of those 350 companies, at least 225 are still operating. Yeah.
So for our teams, as they think about their potential pitches for the contest, would you mind sharing some perspective on what makes a business plan that stands out?
Yeah.
And particularly for those of us who are coming from the science side, how to identify that, perhaps some common pitfalls you see trying to make that transition, since you encounter it a lot?
Yes, so that's an excellent point. A lot of times, particular scientists, but also engineers, lead with the technology. So it's the solution that is looking for a customer. What we're trying to coach you on is to turn this around. We want you to start with an elevator pitch that really starts with the perspective of the customer. What is the problem that that customer has that you're going to solve? in a way that is a must-have rather than a nice-to-have. So positioning is very important. Recognition, what is the essential need that you're solving? Where is that customer positioned in terms of the accessible market? And then to not talk deeply into the technology and the science, but just to talk about the high-level mechanism of action. This is how it works. And then put it back into the context of the business. You know, how big is this opportunity? How well qualified is the team? Do you have a go-to-market strategy that, as a small team, you can effectively execute to acquire customers at a cost that is much lower than the revenue that you get, so that you can actually scale this? So the scalability, the business model, the knowledge of your customer, those are all very important aspects.
And just to follow up to that, could you speak a little bit to what perhaps the best, you know, they have a limited amount of time and resources at their disposal, so what's sort of the low-hanging fruit? What resources should they seek out that will give them the best return on their time and energy?
In terms of our program?
Yes, and also in terms of, you know, as they're investigating the concepts that you just sort of laid out for us.
Right.
You know, there's always that question of how, right? So how, if you're a scientist, what would your recommendation be to start, you know, either get the resources to, or to start thinking about yourself,
right,
doing that market research and actually following through on getting that information?
So Rady School, we often come to you to do market research for us, and we actually pay you for that. So I think leverage that. Start out really finding out, spending a lot of time in getting to know your customer. If you can make it happen, you just talk to 100 of them, and you get sort of consistent responses, that puts you on your way. Then define what the way is you going to transact with as customers in terms of getting the solution to them and how the money finds flowing back to you. What kind of intermediaries are there? Can you attract a strategic partner that can accelerate your time to market and make it a lot cheaper to reach and acquire those customers? Those are important.
Thank you.
In an investor deck or possibly in a business plan, either way, how much do you suggest talking about customers, and what aspects of discussing customers would you put in there?
So I would simply describe what that need is that you're addressing, and why that is a must-have for that customer, and why they would pay you. So it's maybe a paragraph, you know, because then an investor can abstract from that. So we know, or when you talk about your market, you could basically go back to the same premise and say, well, there are, you know, 150,000 of those customers here in San Diego, and then, you know, build it up from there.
Thanks.
Okay, any more? Yes.
Do you have to be a company before you are able to partake of CONNECT?
You have to have more than an idea. You have to have given thought about how would you, if you can articulate an executive summary, just a very basic one, that talks about, you know, who your customer is, what kind of solution you have, and what the technological underpinning is, or what that sophisticated business model is that you're going to implement, that typically is enough.
So when you're creating like a business plan and you're about to talk to VC or whoever it might be who wants to invest in your company, how important is it to have a section there that's really well thought out that says, here's the equity stake I'm willing to give up, and here's how much I expect in return?
We would coach our clients to be very vague on that, because at the end of the day, it depends on at what stage you are with actually implementing your plan when you start sitting down with an investor. If you have a proof of concept, but you have no customer that has validated that they actually buy it, that's a different stage at having the first 10 or 15 beta customers that actually tried it out and gave you feedback. Or you actually have the first 50 products that you sold. So depending on where you are along those lines, depends on how your equity position is going to be defended, right? So what we are trying to help you do is to say, okay, here in the industry are examples of companies that had an exit when they were bought for $100 million when they were at a stage of $10 million in revenues. Those kind of examples that can show an investor what kind of multiples they might get. And then it's becoming really a discussion on what it is that you have already accomplished, how defendable is your intellectual property, or your competitive advantage, and things like that. But I would not ever say, okay, for $1 million, I'm going to give you 20% of my company. That closes doors rather than opening. Are you
Yeah, no,
boot
we're
me up?
just watching the clock, but
Okay.
time for Liz.
All right, I'm going to leave business cards here. Anybody, you're very welcome to contact me, and I would urge you, come into Springboard.
I think what we can do is
Yeah, that sounds good.
Just have to do some IT here. Good evening. Thank you for giving up your evening to be here to hear us out tonight. Pleasure to be here. As Peter said, I'm Liz Gasser. I'm with Qualcomm Labs. I just want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about the things we've been doing internally to Qualcomm, but then more specifically sharing a few thoughts from in the trenches, reviewing business plans, working with early stage businesses on where they take themselves and how they raise support either from management or support from potential investors. So who here is familiar with Qualcomm? All right. Thought there might be a good hands up to that one. So, 25-year-old company, arguably the prototypical startup, right? 25 years ago, we were very small and we were doing trucking and logistics. We started off in a very different business than the one we're currently in today. Fast forward to today, we're the world's largest wireless semiconductor maker, and chances are, if you have a smartphone, if you have any phone, it's either got one of our modems in it, it's got an application processor that we've made, or it has our fundamental underlying technology in it too. But one thing that has remained constant through that frame of reference is that this really is a company that is just passionate about innovation and pushing the envelope in wireless. And so it's why we do a lot of the things we do, and it's why I'm excited to be involved with some of our early stage businesses, and it's why I'm really happy to be here tonight. How are we doing on this?
There we go.
Cool. All right. So, at the heart of Qualcomm, as I say, is innovation. We think we've got a pretty unique model. What we really try and focus on is enablement of the ecosystem. And so, yes, we're known for our chip business. We have a pretty robust licensing business around our core technology. But it really is geared towards creating those enabling platforms that other people can ultimately build upon and leverage and move this industry forward. And we put a lot of money into core R&D to that end. So in 2012, last year, we spent about 20% of our revenues back into R&D. We've invested over $23 billion since we were founded in fundamental R&D. And we work really hard to try and expose that to the rest of the industry. Within that context, we also have a few activities around early stage commercial innovation, which is the group I sit within. The Qualcomm Labs started about 2 years ago now. A little bit as an experiment, but it's one that has grown, looking to really try and change the way we think about building very, very young businesses inside a huge company. Trying to take a look at venture funding and venture investment principles. trying to borrow from lean startup methodology and say, how can we do things differently? How can we avoid making the innovators' dilemma mistakes over and over again as we try and get these very nascent businesses, these businesses that will have to pivot many times through their existence. Arguably, the premise you go in with is not the one you come out with. And so how do we do that? So we put together this subsidiary. We try and form very small, nimble, two-in-a-box type teams that go and tackle building solutions around the problems that we're trying to solve. Those might be how you make smartphones just a little bit smarter, how you realize the true connected home and make that seamless, how do you drive M2M, machine to machine and connected objects to the next level. And so ideas come from all over the company. We have various internal employee contests that drive ideas. We work with corporate R&D, our office of the chief scientist. We bring them in, we incubate them, and ultimately, down the road, our hope is that they exit to being business units, lines of business within Qualcomm. Maybe one day we'll spin one out too. How have we been doing? We've incubated maybe a dozen projects and businesses so far since we were formed. Like any good portfolio, a third of them, well, we went back to the drawing board, we started over, pivoted. A third of them have gone on to other things. They've become lines of business, and I'll talk about one of those in a moment. Or they've become their own business units. And then some of them are still in the works. We're still cooking. And so that's what takes a lot of my time on a day-to-day basis. So where you're all sitting right now thinking about how you write that business plan to go get funding, I do it every day, except mine has to go a few floors up and get management approval. We're in the same boat. So let's talk about one of our projects. This is Qualcomm Life. This is Qualcomm's wireless health division. We've been thinking about wireless health for a long time, actually 7 or 8 years now. But we started thinking about, well, it's not moving as fast as we want it to. This market isn't coming together. It's not coalescing. What can we do to try and change that? And that's how this product, Tuna, came about. It's essentially a wireless hub, plugs into a wall, connects via local radios to medical devices, many of which are already approved to have Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connectivity in them. And then it pairs it with the 3G network and backhauls that. What it essentially does is it very quickly allows end users of short-range wireless-enabled medical devices to get connected properly to the web, to get that data off into the cloud and let physicians and health companies do things with it. And so we started incubating that within the labs. It actually became its own business unit in December 2011. Came out with initially approximately 40 ecosystem partners, and today is at over 200, working with them closely to try and make this vision a reality. I just need a clicker. Another project, this is one of our current in the labs projects, called Gimbal. It's essentially a contextual services platform. That sounds horribly grandiose. It is a developer layer that pulls together geofencing, Wi-Fi based positioning, interest sensing, audio recognition, image recognition, into a development layer that third-party developers can write to. Essentially makes it much more easy to contextually enable an app and create that sixth sense-like experience that we're seeing come through with social, local, mobile applications today. And our objective really was to expose that in an easy-to-use fashion, but also in a very power-efficient fashion on the phone, because that's what we do. That's what we're good at as a company, is putting those pieces together and then letting other people work with them. And so this is rolled out. It's commercially available, gimbal.com. You can use the SDK today. We've been piloting it with customers, including one in Japan. And to show the effectiveness of bringing together contextual capabilities, for the ad use cases we've been testing, we've been seeing a 3x increase in click-through rates on those applications because we've been able to present the right content at the right time to the right user. So, is that a question?
Yeah, can you just give an example of that? I don't really understand it fundamentally.
Okay. So one of the use cases we've been testing, there's a phenomenon in Japan around coupon applications and coupon magazines. And you can present them in a random fashion. if you actually team that with insightful information about where the user is and the time of day, you can suddenly make that a lot more effective. So that's one of the use cases we've highlighted. So I present these not to promote our products per se, but just to give you a flavor of the types of businesses that we've been working with and the types of businesses we think about on a daily basis. So what else have we been doing? Qualcomm Labs at EvoNexus. Who's heard of this program? Okay, smaller number of hands up there. So this started early last year and really came about out of an effort to think about how we get beyond ourselves, think outside our four walls, engage with the entrepreneurial community to move the needle on very early stage spaces, things we cared about, so connected objects, more efficient use of backhaul networks, socially aware applications in the spaces of health and education, or greener technologies for phone production. Those are all big problems, ones that we can't solve on our own, and you need a community to do it. And so it really functions a bit of as a directed investment program for us to try and move the needle on those spaces, but more importantly, move the needle in the San Diego tech community. So it's a program we run jointly with EvoNexus. EvoNexus is a pretty unique incubator. They're completely pro bono. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the incubators and accelerators that have been cropping up and that do a wonderful job helping startups. A lot of them, they come with payment. You're either paying rent or you're giving up equity in your company. EvoNexus is here for the good of San Diego, and they ask nothing in return for their use of their facilities, for participation with their mentors, and for their assistance with fundraising. And they're doing pretty well at it. They've currently got 16 companies in incubation. They've helped the companies that have come through EvoNexus raise over $140 million to date. And they've had 10 successful graduations and 2 acquisitions out of the incubator. So we're quite proud to be working with them. The program we've put together tries to provide a little extra impetus as well. And Qualcomm Labs makes available up to $250,000 in seed funding to admitted companies who we find mutually interesting. They want to work with us a little more, we want to work with them a little more, and we help them with funding. Also access to the base of Qualcomm employees and mentors that we can make available. Example of the companies that have been admitted to date, this was the round we closed last year. Of the 5 companies that came into EvoNexus, we ended up funding 3 in a variety of spaces. Breadcrumbs is social local mobile type of application, leveraging actually the Gimbal platform to present a timeline of a person's day and help present relevant content attached to that. FatSkunk is a mobile malware solution working on using physics engines to do better detection of malware on the phone day one before signatures and virus updates are available. And then Aringa is a platform that is largely deployed in the automotive space, but helps manage the updating of software in complex systems. And so they're all very interesting companies for us to work with and really moving the needle on spaces we care about. We put in a total of $550,000 in seed funding, and we are currently in our next round. As Peter mentioned earlier, we received over 130 applications in the spring round. Currently in the process of going through reviewing those, admitting and engaging in discussions with funding. So, with that said, what do we look for? I think that was the premise for a lot of tonight's discussion. So I wanted to start with kind of my don'ts list. Let's get the basics right here, and then maybe talk about what will help you stand out subsequent to that. So I want to ask you to picture something. You have a pile of 130 applications. If you've ever printed off 130 applications with associated executive summaries, it's about that high, especially if you stick it in binders. You have to review those and make decisions on who to move to a subsequent stage. It's quite a process. So, with that, the key criteria is, who do I want to let through and who are the obvious no's? Because once the obvious no's are gone, I'm going to spend a lot more detailed time with my yeses and my maybes. So, a few tips. If there's an application form, if there's a set of questions that they're asking for you to answer, don't opt out of some of them. It's usually the fastest way to get shot. yeah, I don't want to answer the question on competition, or I'm not going to give you my elevator pitch. No, you don't need to see my financials. I know you asked for them, but you really don't need to see them. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Just answer all the questions. On top of that, 5-minute rule. Back to my stack. Probably got about 5 minutes tops to persuade somebody to keep reading, to do more legwork, to really seek to understand you. So really focus on getting your idea across quickly and effectively. Because then you'll get much more time. You'll be through that first game. And some of that comes with knowing how to describe yourself. My personal pet peeve is the take one company, pair it with the other company. We're Pinterest combined with eBay. It's a huge turn-off. It naturally raises the question, well, if you're Pinterest combined with eBay, what's going to stop Pinterest doing this and what's going to stop eBay doing this? No offense meant to any companies referenced tonight, not meant to represent the living or the dead, and it's entirely fictional. But really get it crisp. You know, think about your target audience. For this audience, who needs to solve this problem? I provide this answer. And unlike all of my competition, A, B, C, D, E, my differentiating element is why. Whatever it is, just keep it crisp and keep it in layman's terms. And that will usually get somebody to keep engaging with you and to keep paying attention to your idea. Show and tell doesn't get old. It works when you're 5 and it works when you're 50. If you've prototyped, if you have pictures of your application or your product and you can show it's real, do it. You know, put it in there. Send some extra materials. Put it in the application. Just really show you know what you're doing and you understand what you're trying to drive towards. And then lastly, be brutally honest. There's, in many times you're trying to tackle a problem that you perceive in the market. And it might not be something you have experience in, but you believe passionately that you can fix it. Just admit it, if that's the case. You don't have experience in a specific segment, be upfront about it, but then show how you're going to get it. What advisors have you brought on board? Who have you interviewed? Who did you go talk to? What have you done to get smart and really internalize the problems of the space that you are going after? So, just a few high-level don'ts from my perspective. So now, we've gotten past now I'm in the yes, maybe pile, and I didn't get put in the no pile straight out of the gate. How do I stand out? Think about it in two layers to some extent. At the very conceptual level, there is the big idea, the thing you are going to go solve. And for me, that really has 3 main elements to it. First one, is it desired? This is what Rupert talked about to some extent. Can you demonstrate that there is an audience out there who really wants what it is you're selling? Or put a better way, is there a manifest problem out there in the world that is either a pain point or a passion or a need, something that you can tangibly say, that needs to be fixed, or if I did this, it would be adopted. And that's step 1. On top of that, though, is it even feasible? Now, where is the state of your solution or product relative to the idea? Have you demonstrated if this is a hardcore technology problem? Maybe you can demonstrate it that this is technically going to work, either through simulations or prototyping. Because if it seems infeasible, if it is infeasible, it doesn't matter how bad the need is. It's really hard to build that business and get it off the ground. And then lastly, you might have a huge need, and it might be absolutely feasible to go do it, and you might be the only person in the world who can do it. But is it viable? Can you even make money at this? Can you demonstrate that there is a willingness to pay, or a budget that can be co-opted or accrued in your direction as a result of your activities? So those for me are the 3 big blocking and tackling ones, and ones that you really need to help your reader understand. And then below that comes what I call more of the executional layer. So, okay, we've demonstrated there's a market, you've demonstrated it's technically possible and people can make money. Great, so did the next 10 guys in line who've got the same idea who want to go after it. So now you have to demonstrate, well, I have the best people for doing this. Here's my team and here's why they're extra qualified to win in this space. And if my team today isn't that team, here's how I'm going to go get that team. Here's what I plan to do. Secondly, positioning. This is where competition comes in. It's a common misperception that competition is a bad thing in a business plan submission. No, I'm unique. I'm the only person who can solve this problem. Yeah, and sometimes that means you're the fool who's going after it when everyone else has realized that it's not the right play. So competition isn't bad. Often it helps to validate your space. The art here is demonstrating your high ground, why you will win against that competition. What makes you different, what makes you unique, or what position will you try and capture to prevent them eating your lunch? And then lastly, promotion. This often gets overlooked. For me, it's incredibly important. How will you take this to market? What are the things you intend to do that will accrue the customers that are going to make that business plan? You know, what are you going to do to get the first 5, the next 10, the next 100? Especially important with B2B, but also for consumer. I mean, there's only so many apps that go onto the App Store and get hundreds of millions of users. Lightning in a bottle. Most of the time it takes a lot of hard work, reaching out, guerrilla tactics, viral marketing, direct engagement. So think about the one foot in front of the other. 1, 5, 10, 20. And some of that comes back to what Rupert said about knowing that audience. So it's important to demonstrate you took the time and you went and invested in understanding whether it's a consumer or a business customer, what it is that makes them tick. If it's consumers, go stand on a train platform and bug them with a clipboard. It's amazing the number of people who will talk to random strangers who are asking questions. If it's businesses, it's scary, but go through the phone book, call people, walk into establishments, say, hey, I want to talk to somebody about the following. Join networking groups. It all helps, and it will all build your positioning, your promotion, and your understanding what it is you're doing. So that all said, I feel like I've been talking a lot. It's now 6:17. I know you guys might be on the timeline, so I'm going to stop. And I think we're going to team up if there are any questions and go from there.
Yeah, so we have about 5 minutes for questions.
Okay.
So maybe, Rupert, you want to come up?
Sure.
So what information specifically should be in the executive summary, and how long should it be?
I think there's probably some good guidelines out there. Actually, I heard one referenced on a panel I was at yesterday called The Art of the Start, which apparently has a very good checklist of things to put in, but generally 10 to 15 slides, tops. Who is your target audience? What value proposition do you bring to them? How will you differentiate versus the other people in the space, and who are they? Talk about your team,